So I went to a Bible college in a Midwestern state and was passionate about student ministry and tried to get involved in the popular church that a lot of my friends were attending in their student ministry. I remember that about a month or two after I had joined that church, I went to the youth pastor and asked if there was any way that I could get involved. And he said that they were all set, that they had all the counselors that they needed, which I understood. I was a freshman, new to this church, and knew not to expect too much. But I asked if they needed help in any other ways. He said, no, we're all set. I said, do you ever need somebody who can give kids rides to youth group? He said, no, we're okay. I said, do you ever need somebody just go to a game of a kid or any, is there any, and he said, no. And I remember trying to be as creative as possible. And I said, do you need somebody to just show up the day before youth group, vacuum and set up chairs, and then show up after youth group is over and vacuum and clean it up again? And he said, no. And then I gave him one more option. I said, what if all I did was came in once or twice a semester after you guys have an overnighter and in the church gym, and I just cleaned up pizza boxes, swept and mopped the gym. And he said, dude, we're all set. And I remember how discouraging that was. My girlfriend at the time, she's now my wife, was attending a much smaller church that, wasn't as, cool to go to. Anyway, I ended up attending that church a few times and met the pastor who expressed an interest in me personally and asked me if there was any way that I ever wanted to get involved. And I told him, I said, I want to be a youth pastor someday. And he said, well, why someday? Why not now? And in my heart, I was just, because I'm too young. I'm the other guy, in my head, I was thinking of all of these reasons why this other guy didn't want me. And then to this guy who you've never heard of is on this side, his name is Bud Everett. And Bud Everett is not a famous guy. He pastored a church of 100. But Bud Everett gave me permission to do whatever I wanted to reach kids who were far from Jesus in that community. And we started off with 3 middle schoolers. And a year and a half later, we had 35. And so the church went from 100 to 135. And that 35% growth was all pre-adolescent street punks. And the old gray hairs in that church were the most loving and patient. And these kids were loud and rowdy. And they thought it was the coolest thing in the world that so many of these kids from the neighborhood were finding and following Jesus. And that put in me a passion to make sure that I was never the barrier, the roadblock to other people finding ways to serve God in ways that they were passionate about. So now I'm a church planting pastor in the south side of Boston. And when we started our church, it was by accident with some neighbors who had asked us to start a Bible study. And I was a professor at a college here in the city. And some of the students in my classes had asked to get involved. And so I did with them what Bud Everett had done with me. And today, 12 years later, those guys have since started a couple of businesses that they've sold and now are on full-time staff here at Grace Church. One of those guys, those 19-year-old kids who helped me start Grace, is now starting our first campus this next fall. And one of the guys in my mentor group just finished his MBA, paid for by T-Mobile. Thank you, T-Mobile, for paying for that. And has now felt just like unfulfilled but doesn't have any seminary training. He was in a mentor group with me. He was one expressing a desire for engagement in what God was doing here at Grace. And so we've been giving him some opportunities. He just sold his apartment or house, not sure where God wants him to go next. And told God this past week, God, if you don't want me to do this anymore, then take these 3 things off my plate. The very next day, his boss asked him to do more of those 3 things. And so he feels like that's God's permission to leave that career. And he actually told me last night on the phone that he's all in to be the right-hand guy of this next church plant in Braintree. And he doesn't know it yet, but God's going to call him to start the next church plant north of there.